Hey, in this episode of the podcast, we've got Jeremy O'Neill back. How you doing, Jeremy?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Things have changed a little bit since our last conversation. We dove into what children's ministry looked like at the church you were on staff at. I always kind of like hearing like what children's or students or family ministry looks like in other churches. And so we talked about that before. Now we're going to talk about VBS, which it feels like a good time of the year to do that.
Yeah.
Some people are like super early VBS planners, like they're knocking it out. They're getting ready in like September, October, the year before. Some, I'd say the normal is probably January to March. It's rocking. And then there's like it's May and that thing's 2 months or 6 weeks away. And wait a minute,
Last minute scramble.
I need a curriculum, so people are all over the place. So I feel like this is a good time. But give us an introduction again for anybody who didn't listen before, and an update. Like, what are you doing now?
Sure. Yeah. So, my name is Jeremy O'Neill. I am a longtime kids pastor. Spent 14 years working in the local church at various places, which has been super fun. I had a chance to learn from some amazing mentors and experience a lot of cool things. These days, I spend most of my energy investing in kids pastors. We just launched the Simple Kids Ministry podcast. We launched KidmenU, which is a certification program for kids ministry leaders, as well as a few other consulting type things. But now we're pretty excited because we've got a book coming out called How to VBS, which we'll talk about in a minute. Those are maybe like the most visible changes probably in life, but on the personal side of things, man, it's been a ton of change for us. About 14 months ago to the day, actually, we adopted our first child. Her name's Olivia. She's amazing. There's a whole God story there, by the way. And then literally a month ago, we had our second child. His name's Owen. So right now, we are just trying to keep our head above water at home. We're adjusting to life with basically two babies. Like it's pretty insane. They were exactly 13 months apart. So we were really close to having Irish twins. But yeah, man, things have been really cool. It's been a lot of change for us, like professionally. It's been fun going after some of these challenges. And then personally, the Lord has allowed us to build a family, finally. Like we've been trying to have kids forever. Yeah. And so, man, it's a pretty sweet season.
Dude, that's awesome. It's great for you. We didn't even talk about this last time we were on. Last time we were on would have been years before, any of this. And my wife went through infertility, and we, always loved adoption and believed in that too. And some of those years could be really long. Those years are, like we went 3 years. And, obviously people go a lot longer than that, but every month, every year feels like 10. Yeah, that's a tough season. I'm really
100%.
happy for you guys. And that's awesome. You're in the thick of it now. 14 months apart.
Yeah, the Lord answered those prayers. Now we're living with it.
It's gonna like, oh, they're quiet. Oh, the one just woke the other one up. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're gonna get a lot of that, I'm sure. That's great. And well, let's talk about your book, How to VBS, that's coming out. And let's talk about VBS. Let's make this conversation helpful to those who are doing VBS or any type of camp. My church doesn't do VBS in the practical sense, but we do this arts camp every year that, in my opinion, is 3 VBSs in one. So it's a lot. It's a lift. It's a 9 to 3 every day camp, and then they pull off like a junior musical in 1 week, and so we do 2 shows on the weekend, and so it's essentially you're on Sunday through the next Saturday.
That's a lot.
In terms of like it starts Sunday night, it's every day 9 to 3, show Friday night, show Saturday, reset the whole building. It is. It's one of those, 100-hour work weeks. Is what that is. What that
I've been there.
What that week is. So we, and that'll translate. Like if you do any type of camp, any type of summer thing like this, a lot of what we talk about is going to be in there. But what led you to write the book? Like obviously, there's lots of VBS curriculum, some VBS content out there. What were you thinking when you wrote the book?
Yeah. Okay. So this is funny because I never would have thought like I'd be the guy to write the book about VBS. There's so many people who do such a great job at this. Even in the book, I talk about one of them. The church I grew up in, I worked there on staff for 7 years. That was my first job. I was there as a kid. And while I was there, I got to learn from some incredible people. One of them, her name's Amanda. I hope she's listening to this at some point. But Amanda is an administrative wizard. We're going to bring her on the Simple Kids Ministry podcast and share a little bit about that because I want to give her her flowers because I feel like so much of what's in this book I learned from Amanda. So many of the systems, processes, strategies, like she was so good when it came to planning and coordinating things. But the real discovery for me was kind of looking around and seeing what was available. Like it's kind of shocking to see that there's not a whole lot from an unbiased perspective about VBS. You can find a director's guide, you can find resources and whatever. Almost everything you find is attached to a publisher. And that's not bad. Those are very, very helpful resources. But when it's attached to a publisher, there's kind of an agenda. It's not a bad one. But they want you to buy their thing. They want you to use their program, and they want you to do it their way. And a lot of kids ministry leaders need something that's custom. They need something that's original. They need to be able to take that VBS kit and then customize it for their needs. Or there are lots of people who are going to completely do something original, and there's no playbook for that. They're just in the Wild West and trying to figure it out all on their own. So I really felt like there was a place for somebody to come in and just share from a neutral perspective. I have no agenda. I'm not trying to sell any VBS kit. I'm just a guy who's done a bunch of VBSs, and I'm trying to share some things I've tried, some things I've succeeded at, some things I failed at, but all those trial and error things, hopefully people can learn from and take some shortcuts so they don't have to deal with the pain of it the way that I did.
Yeah, and I think some of the guides created by publishers also are built around their curriculum too, which is great, but it's a little bit more of a how-to guide of how to do this. And a lot of them do a great job of throwing in extra stuff, like some of the how-to, like general tips or principles or whatever, or if you get in the community. But you're right, there's no, we have a bunch of articles actually going up soon about VBS on the new KidmenU.com site, and it's because how do you have a children's ministry website and not have something about curriculum? So we got somebody who helped do VBS at a large church for years, and she's written a bunch of articles about it. I think she's already written them. They're just not, maybe they're there by the time, people are listening to this. And part of me was thinking it is funny how you don't really go on the interwebs and find, like one great place to learn all about tips about how to do VBS. And the communities are great. You talk in the Facebook groups, you can get ideas and people share. So I think it's a good idea to bring together a book about it, which is great. What are some of what's the topics in the book? What are the big questions you address? Kind of what's the structure? What's your approach?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. From like a super macro perspective, there's 3 big sections in the book. There's planning, programming, and people. That's kind of how we're breaking it up. And within that, it's structured like a handbook. It's not meant to be the sort of thing where you go, cover to cover in order. In fact, I think a lot of people are going to get this book and they're going to bounce around and they're going to see the table of contents, which is very thorough. I want it to be easy to spot what you need and go straight to it. But
it's
within
like a car manual. It's like, I need to 100%. Work on the brake light.
Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole manual, but I just need to know the section about this. And in this case, listen, there's tons of topics that, again, if you're a publisher, you're probably not going to hit on. Should this be a paid event or free? And if it's a paid event, how much should you charge? Or should you do price jumps, deadlines? Like what do your timelines look like? When you make announcements, should you do just one big announcement, or should you do a save the date and then a theme reveal and then a registration launch? Like there's ways that you can do this that give you so much more momentum. So we get really specific about all that kind of stuff. And even, from a programming perspective, I just share some of the things that have worked. When it comes to main sessions, what does your hosting segment look like? Now I share kind of my recipe of what served me really well over the years and some options that I've seen work really well. My goal is to kind of take VBS piece by piece and then give you options to consider so that you can figure out, okay, what makes sense to my church and my context? Because we get stuff in a VBS kit and that's great, but usually they want you to do it their way. And the reality is there's no church like your church. And so I want to give you the full context for each part of VBS so you can figure out, okay, what's going to really serve our kids and families the best? So we get really specific about a lot of different things. If you like to geek out about VBS, this is the book for you.
Well, let's talk planning. What, in your opinion, and in the book I'm sure addresses this, is a good planning window, roadmap? When do you start? When do you do these different things? Like big picture, not necessarily in the weeds, but what does that look like to you? When do you think when you start promotion versus all the other things?
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be multiple perspectives here, and people may not agree with what I'm about to share. I used to be of the mind, maybe because I have served in large churches, multi-site churches, that you've just got to get way ahead of stuff. And so my thoughts coming into this book were probably you start like a year ahead of time. Like by the time you wrap up your VBS this year, you should have some idea of when you're doing your next one, maybe even your theme for next year. So I would have said a year out. I think for a lot of churches though, that might be overkill. Like I really think like late fall is probably when you should make decisions around, when are you going to do your VBS, maybe sharing some save the dates. Hopefully you've got a head start on what theme you might want to do. But really, I don't really even touch VBS stuff until January these days. Like we'll make those decisions, but I won't really worry about it until January. Again, that's different for everybody. I know some people who want to be a year ahead. And like you even talked about at the top of the podcast, like there are some people who aren't going to even think about this till March. And that's okay. There is a plan for fast tracking all that stuff. But I think best practice is...
Yeah, maybe May too.
Gosh, that
I always laugh like this can't be just like that, but I laugh at like friends of ours that write their own curriculum and it's available on a website. Like you can literally buy it and download it, and people buying and downloading Easter curriculum Saturday night at 10 p.m. or Sunday morning at 8:30.
It makes me so anxious just listening to that.
People can't be doing that with VBS, but I bet you they're doing I bet you there's some month out stuff, happening.
Somebody, if you need, get this book. It'll help you fast track it.
Well, and this is part of like my random philosophy of event stuff is I feel like there's different phases to the event, the planning, the promotion, the preparation, getting stuff ready, all that kind of stuff, pulling it off.
Yeah.
And VBS is one of those ones where our arts camp called Art Beat, we really want to pick the date and know it before the one ends, because the reality is people do plan their vacations a year in advance. My family does, just the way that works. But certainly in the fall, like people are you get late, like November, December, people are booking things for the next summer. Yeah. And so it's great. I think that to me, it's easy to pick the date and nothing else. You don't have to know anything else.
Sure.
Like it's not, the date, the theme of the curriculum or whatever is not changing what date you pick. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think if you do that, then you buy yourself more time to get to these other pieces, which including what is the curriculum, what's the theme, all that kind of stuff. That's great.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty too of splitting out your announcements. That's the thing we talk about in the book. I think growing up, we announced everything all at once. Dates, theme, registration, it's ready, go.
Yeah.
And that's fine if you do that. But like you said, you could take some of the pressure off by just saying, all I need to know right now in the fall are my dates. We just need to pick a date. And for most churches, that's not a big deal because you own your own building. You can do it whenever and plan your ministry calendar. The most recent church I was at was not the same. We were a set up tear down church. We met at the local high school. And so we did our event at that high school as well. So that was a whole process. We had to get way, way, way ahead of that because we weren't in charge of that location and that venue. But again, if you separate it out, save the date in the fall, figure out your theme and do a big theme reveal later on, and then do a big registration kickoff, not only does that give you a ton of momentum at each one of those things, like it turns one marketing window into several, but it gives you time to figure stuff out along the way, right? I don't have to have my registration form done by September. I've got time to figure that out, So that's another advantage of it.
Now, what do you think about paid versus free VBS?
Yeah.
And then even the timeline of promoting the registration.
Yeah, this is interesting. Okay, so I do ministry in California, and out here on the West Coast, almost every VBS is paid. It's really rare when you find like a free VBS. Like it's kind of a unicorn out here. And in doing some of the research for this book, I was jumping on Facebook groups and I would throw out poll questions and whatever. And I quickly found most people don't pay for VBS. Like they don't make them charge anything. And I discovered after talking to a bunch of people, it might be a regional thing. I think in the polls, it was anywhere between 83 and 87% of people do a free VBS. So
that's pretty
all
high.
this talk,
that's a pretty high percentage.
Price it won't apply to that 80%. But out here, we're big fans of it. I think in California, if people see a free VBS, almost their antenna goes up. Like, why is it free? Like it actually feels like something cheap, and they're less inclined to sign up. So it's a weird psychological thing, but I'm a big fan of charging. Hopefully it's not a lot. You're not trying to burden a family, but also there's ways to complement it too. Listen, I've never turned somebody down if price is an issue. There's ways to do scholarships. There are people in your church who can contribute. So I think for a lot of the people who would probably counter the price argument by saying, but I don't want a barrier to entry, there's ways to handle that. I've never experienced that being a problem.
Our arts camp isn't comparable. It's much more expensive than a VBS, and the ticket is not
Sure.
cheap. It's like a camp. I mean, it's actually, I would say for what we do, it's cheap. I think it's $200 or something like that is what we charge
It's
now.
not bad at all.
It started at 75 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
and if done right, it pays for itself like that,
Sure.
but barely. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty high ticket item. If that came straight out of our budget, that would be more than our entire kids budget and combined, all together, completely more.
Yeah.
So to charge there helps. And the other thing I love about it is, and again, our arts camp's different, but even for a VBS, like I guess this is the scenario I don't love, and this is just, you might agree with me probably, but and I'm sure this, according to your percentages, 83 to 87% or whatever, like a lot of them might be mad with me for saying this, but I don't like if I see a church, and I'm just going to make up a number, but imagine the children's budget is 10 grand and VBS is 5 of the 10. I'm like, I don't like this. There's something about this that I don't love. Now, maybe if VBS is like super successful, it's whether it's a discipleship driven or an evangelistic driven, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Maybe, but when half your budget is one thing in the summer, VBS, I don't love that. Whereas if you could charge and it pays for itself, and now that 5 grand goes back in, and your 10 grand is for everything else, and now you've doubled the resources you can put towards kids ministry, I would just like that a lot more, I guess is the way I would say it. The numbers would go down for sure, right? But I also like the other thing about paying too is a little more like if you don't pay, you're probably more likely to not show up.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like there's no stake in the game. So there's certain things like when you pay, and again, like you said, not a lot. So anyway, that's interesting that the percentage is that high, because I definitely, now I'm in the Northeast. We're probably a little bit more like you are on the West Coast than we are the South. That's a Southern thing.
Yeah, coastal might be different. I think over there, I started to notice a lot of that as well. I think it might just be, in the Bible Belt in the South, Midwest, it's probably very, very common based on what I've kind of seen to have a free VBS, and to charge there actually might be an uphill battle. So again, in the book, I don't prescribe anything. Like whatever works for your church. If you've done a free options. VBS for years, don't read my book and all of a sudden make people pay. Obviously, like use good judgment on all that. But again, I agree with everything, because in a lot of the research I was doing, and even finding a large church in our area that did a free VBS, that was a thing they said. They said there are a lot of people who sign up because it's free and we fill up every year, and then 20 to 30% of people no-show on the very first day. So it was a whole problem for them. They're actually not even going to do free anymore. At least based on what they told me when I was interviewing them, they're like, we're going to do something super cheap, even just like $10 or $5, just to make sure that if you sign up, there's enough accountability that you're actually going to show up for the thing you signed up for. Because we are going to have to turn people away, and we don't want to be for nothing,
And this is an event principle, or any principle of anything you sign up or pay for. The more you charge, the lower the no-show rate will get. Like if you charge $10, you'll still get 20% that won't show. You charge 20, it'd be like 18%. You know what I mean? I don't know what the number is. Ours is $200. Our no-show rate is like 2%. Because it's enough money that like who's saying, I just got $200 to burn. Like most people aren't doing that. So, and stuff always comes up. So it's going to get some measure of a no-show rate. But and you could plan for. You could do like, I don't know, is it hotels or airlines? I don't think that's true anymore. But the whole idea of like we sell more seats than we have kind of thing. You could always do that. You plan on your no-show rate. If you're doing free and you always get 20 to 30% don't come, well, then you can do at least 15% more than your capacity, and maybe just build that in. Okay, here's another question for you. What is your take on, like, I feel like this could be another controversial one. Like, what is a successful VBS?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a good question.
And I have my thoughts, but I want to hear what you think. And also, like, just the idea, like, that different, churches will do it, and then kids will, you might get the kids that go to multiple VBSs in one area. There used to be websites, I think, where you could see VBSs listed in their dates in a city, and that way you knew if you wanted to, like, consumer shop them all, you could.
Yeah.
Just all of that goes into VBS. That's like, it's just other church kids coming to your thing. All that. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. I mean, I open the book with my 4 reasons why we do VBS, and they're not going to be that much different than anybody else's, right? Our 4, I'll just share them. Number 1, reach families. Here we're talking about outreach, new families specifically. Number 2, drive growth, not numerically, but personal and spiritual growth. Number 3, build relationships. I heard one person say that camp and VBS, those are things like a year's worth of ministry in 1 week. Like, it's huge for relational investment. And then number 4 is mobilizing people. Like there's something about people serving at something and rallying around something. And by the way, killer way to build your team. Like this is actually one of the primary ways where I get volunteers for my team throughout the year, because I get them in for a one-time serving opportunity like VBS. I spoil the heck out of them so they love it. And then when I ask them, do you want to serve again? Most of them say yes. So it's a great way to actually build your team and other teams at your church too, whether that be safety teams, greeting teams, worship teams, whatever. So those are my 4 reasons. I think if you were to ask people the criticism for VBS, the number one thing you hear is, okay, but we're not reaching new families. You know, we're doing this thing, we're spending a lot of money. The whole reason we're doing it is to be an outreach, and it's not working. First of all, I would say either number one, maybe you're not actually measuring well, because a lot of people can't give me a fact-based argument for that.
Yeah.
When I ask them, okay, well, what's the percentage of people who are new who come to your VBS, and how many are at church?
Yeah.
Because for me, it's 15 to 30% new people. So to me, I don't see that in my facts. So number 2 is, I wonder if there's something that you're doing that you could elevate, that you could level up, that would reach new people. Because I just find that to be a little bit of a hollow argument. I think that was a very common, popular thing to say back in the day for reasons why you wanted to kill your VBS, because it is a lot of time. It is a lot of money. It's a big thing to commit to. And so a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, what's the return? What are we getting out of this? So I think if you do it right, following a lot of things in the book too, by the way, you can get new families. And there could be some simple upgrades from the way that you talk about your event to the way you market it, to the way that you structure it. Even one idea in here that I think is killer is, you probably heard of Bayside Church up in like the Bay Area in California.
To the Children's Pastors Conference, was talking with one of the staffers there.
Yeah, they're
and a
incredible.
Former staffer there. Yeah, both in the same week.
Yeah. Years ago, back when I was at Sandals, we were actually thinking about introducing a VBS. So talk about that. That was around like 2017, 2018, something like that. Our church was growing. We had 11 campuses, 11,000 people. We didn't have a VBS, but we realized there was value in doing it. We were actually about to start one. So we were asking the people that we thought did it best, which is them. They call theirs Breakaway. And they had one thing that I have stolen and ripped off every single year. They gave me permission, so it's okay. But they have this concept, and I talk about it in the book, called an invite day. So they don't market this at all. It's actually kind of like secret. I mean, if you know, you know. They do it every year, but they're not going to put it publicly on the website or registration page anywhere. And here's how it works. On the very first day of VBS, they tell all of their kids, hey, we're doing something special. On day 5 or whatever our last day is, that's a special day where you can bring a friend to VBS. And then they give them a private link or a private invite card that they can share with their friends. And it's a 1-day only registration. It's usually like $5, something super cheap. Again, just enough to have skin in the game. But what they do is, all those people that they might have missed, who are new families, new kids, people on a sports team in your class, in your neighborhood, whatever, all of a sudden you just unleashed every single kid at your VBS to go bring a friend and join them on the very last day. And then it gives you a chance to overstaff on that one day. So if you get a bunch of volunteers who say, hey, I can only serve for 1 day of the event, which one would be the best day to serve? Well, this one. This is the one where we're actually going to need to probably like double our team, and also maybe restructure some of the way we do events for scale in case we have a bunch of people. But I've used that every year since. And so you keep it private. You don't tell anybody until the very first day. And then all of a sudden, the kids do the work for you. They bring their friends. Like one year we did it, and we like increased our numbers by 40% on that last day. And by the way, had a bunch of those kids start a relationship with Jesus. It was incredible. Now, they do theirs a little bit different because I think they feel uncomfortable about the idea of doing an altar call on an invite day, like a bait and switch. So I get that argument. They do their gospel presentation on day 4 and then invite day on day 5. But I said, you know what? If I got all these kids, I'm going to tell them about Jesus. I'm going to give them the opportunity. Yeah. I don't feel bad about it. But yeah, so there are ways. All that being said, there are ways to get new people in your church.
Yeah, and that is one of the complaints about VBS that I thought was somewhat valid. I know a lot of churches that I helped would measure, how many people are new, and it'd be a decent number, 20, 30%, whatever. How many come back? It's 1, 2%, it's very small. But that leads to another question I have for you that I have my own thoughts about too. I think, in my opinion, this is true of everything, even events and things beyond VBS. I think you have to land on like what is the main goal of this thing? And then what are the secondary, tertiary goals? You know what I mean? And I think what happens with VBS is we don't really decide, is this primarily an evangelistic event or a discipleship event? And the answer a lot of people want to give is both. It's like, well, that's not great, you know, because you should always prioritize as a leader. But it's also not great because are you really thinking through every decision? Is it equally 50% of each is the purpose? And if it is, then you're using that as a filter when you're making decisions about registration or follow-up or whatever. And I feel like sometimes if churches would just decide, you know, hey, this is mostly a discipleship thing. We're going to do evangelism with it. We're going to invite, we're going to try to reach the community, all of that. But that's secondary. Well, that would determine how you program and what you teach and what you do in it and all of that. If you said it's primarily an evangelistic thing, you would lean much heavier into inviting and marketing and getting people in and follow-up. You know, your follow-up would be really on point, trying to help them take a next step. Like you would spend as much time thinking about the next steps after VBS as you do the VBS. And so I just think that's helpful too, is to pick, what is this? What's the number one? What's in the driver's seat? Evangelism or discipleship? And I know people will push back and say, I want it to be both. But I think you should pick who's in the driver's seat, who's riding shotgun, and then use that as a filter. Like what would you say yours was at your church? Church is. Which one was the driver?
Well, it depends if you ask my boss or you ask me. I think most executive pastors or senior leaders, I think most people at the top of the church org chart are probably going to want like evangelistic. They want new families, and I get it, you know. And part of that is because of what VBS has been in the past. That's what it has been. It's been an outreach to get new families. I think that's great. If you look at my 4, though, when I say reach families, drive growth, build relationships, mobilize people, 3 of those 4 are discipleship. So to me, it is kind of a both. And if I did have to pick a priority, I actually think there's enough value in doing a VBS if all you do is disciple people. You're going to have kids start a relationship with Jesus. You're going to have volunteers who finally, like people in your church who have not been serving, who are finally getting in the game. And what happens when people serve? They grow. You know, so I think there's enough value in VBS purely for that, even if we didn't have a spike of new people. I kind of view the evangelistic part as kind of a bonus, the cherry on top. I know a lot of people would disagree with me, but I also think, listen, we have to have a good long conversation about why we believe that evangelism and discipleship have to be 2 separate things. Because I don't think they are. I think they're one and the same. I don't think you can be just an evangelistic church or just a discipleship-driven church. You need both.
No, you're some kind of balance, And every church, to me, though, is a little more than one than the other.
Sure.
Some churches are a lot more one than the other. But you know, usually it's rare you find the 50-50. You know, like, man, this is like almost perfectly.
Well, and it doesn't have to be 50-50. But to your point there can be a 60-40 going on. That's fine. Yeah. But when you're like 80-20 or 90-10 or 100-0, I think that's a problem. I think you create a really imbalanced church. Now, there's a church, I won't say which one because I don't want to put anybody on blast, but there's a church in our region growing up, and it was kind of like the running joke that this is the place where you get saved, but once you like finally get your spiritual feet under you, you find another church because they just don't have a second step for you.
They were too far on the evangelistic side, not 100%. Enough on the discipleship. Yeah.
And I can think of many churches, frankly, dying churches who have never once thought about how to get new people in. All they care about is growing people. And so like there's problems on both sides. You should have a balance, but it shouldn't be like a heavy imbalance.
Yeah. And I think that's true of VBS too. And some of it is, you know, your VBS is one of these imbalances. Sure. Not in a bad way, but it's 60-40, it's 70-30.
Yeah.
And then so fine. Just what is it, and stick, you know, and leverage it. I think that's part of it too, is like leverage that. Like, again, if it was more discipleship than evangelistic, I would want more volunteers who are going to be the same ones the kids see on Sunday. No different than student ministry camp. Like I want to get a year of Sundays in 1 week versus if it's evangelistic, it doesn't matter as much. That's their first introduction to these people, more of them. So, you know, there's just things like that. The pricing, the registration, the invite thing, like it would drive a lot of your decisions if you knew we're going to be more, you know, evangelistic. We're going to be more discipleship oriented. So, and then some of it too is if you can get your leaders, let's say your leadership is for evangelistic. If you can get them on board with the idea of discipleship oriented, that takes a lot of the pressure off. You know what I mean? In terms of like, maybe it has always been discipleship oriented, but leadership is always one evangelistic. And if we can all just agree that it's fine as is, discipleship wise, and we're going to try to reach people, of course, but that would help a lot. People would feel like, oh, okay, so that's, like our camp, for example, it is over 50% is not a part of our church. And part of that's because it's for 3rd through 8th graders. Where else can 3rd through 8th graders get that kind of experience? You know, if you're in high school, you're doing stuff at your school, and there's even things outside of school. But if you're in elementary, certainly, or even middle school, not a lot of options. And I have nothing to do with this, so I feel like I can brag on it. What we do is really good. Most of the shows, every show I watch is better than most high school shows I see. It's amazing how talented these kids are. And part of it is it's a church doing it, and we have tech and lights. You know what I mean? That's the downside of like a lot of school shows is the AVL is not as good. And so obviously there's high demand. And so it has, I mean, the performance part of our camp sells out in 15 minutes every year. That's how in demand it is. And so over half is not from our church. But at the same time, our number one thing is actually not evangelistic. Like I would describe our number one goal of that camp is to fan the flame of the gifts that kids have to leverage that maybe they're not able to do elsewhere because there's not a lot of these opportunities for them. So that's the number one goal. It's actually not evangelistic. I mean, I usually call it discipleship oriented. Like you're connecting with how God wired you and some of the skills you have and things like that. And we're helping you leverage them. And the great thing about the camp is you can do tech, you can do building the set and design, you can do costumes. So it's not just about what's happening on stage. So I just think getting clear about that takes some of the pressure off. Like we're not sitting there every year evaluating how many of the new people started attending regularly. We look it up, but we don't, well, and here, let me throw this in there. What do you think about this?
Sure.
I feel like every VBS has to do this. You absolutely have to, in your registration form, have a question that tells you whether that person is part of your church, another church, or no church, right? You got to. Simple, just, it's like a check all that apply. I regularly attend this church. I regularly attend another church. I have not attended a church in the past year. And you can even put a couple other check boxes in there if you want to mix it in with some other things.
Sure.
I heard about this from a friend. I found it online. You know what I mean? That way it's like all mixed into one thing. It sounds like you agree with that. I feel like you got to know who you're serving.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm a big fan of having simple forms. I don't like when it's cluttered. So my way of getting the information that you're alluding to is actually to split it in 2 questions. And most forms you can do this where they call it conditional formatting. So my first question is, what church do you attend? Or some version of that. And there's only 3 options. There's you go to our church, you go to another church, or we don't go to church. That's all. And then what I can do is have a follow-up question for some of those answers where it only applies if you go to another church. So if they check that box in the first question, the next question that pops up is, which church do you go to? Great. Now we have data on that. Or maybe you said, hey, I don't go to church. Now I want to know, how'd you hear about us? So that's the follow-up question. So yeah, I think the one thing you've got to have on your form is that question of where do you go to church? Because that's the primary way that we measure, are we doing a bunch of church kids or are we doing that? I mean, there are other ways where we can stack up that data and we can look at our database and whatever, but the easiest way at a glance is to have that question. So I'm a big fan of that.
So what you want is like when they click, I'm a part of another church, the price doubles actually is what, no, I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
That's lower. The conditional formatting, you are now charged double. Or it was free, but now it's $100.
Exactly.
Okay, let's wrap up with this. You might need a moment to think through it. Give me one programming nugget, because programming was one of the, a whole big section in the book, and then one people nugget, and it could be a recommendation. It could be, I don't know, a problem people face that you kind of address in the book, but we spent a lot of time on the planning here, which I kind of feel like is right for this time of year. But we didn't spend a whole lot on the programming or the people. So give me one of each. Like, what do you want us to talk about?
Yeah. Okay. So for the programming side, I think probably one of the biggest takeaways from this book for a lot of people is our use of planning grids. We talk about those in the book a lot. People use this. It's not like I'm the first one to think of this, but I think about the very first VBS that I was responsible for. I told you the church I grew up in, I worked for a gal named Amanda, and our kids pastor's name was Carrie. They were incredible to learn from. But those first few years of ministry, I was just a guy on the team. Year 1, I was an intern, worked my way up to leading some elementary stuff. But there was a model in place and I was learning from it. But the very first time I was a kids pastor and like the buck stopped with me, I remember feeling so anxious as we were planning our event. It felt like there was constantly like, what am I forgetting? What do I still have to do? It felt like there's always 100 more tasks. And I just was really overwhelmed, to be honest. And I remember what a mentor told me. It wasn't about this, but he would tell me about like stress. He would say, when you're worried and stressed, write it down. So if you feel like so many people are mad at you right now and you're just frustrating people, okay, write down, who are all the people who might be mad at you right now? Maybe it's actually only 2 people. But you don't know that until you write it down. It feels like everybody in the church. But once you write it down, you realize it's actually just Larry and Dave. I don't know. Just random
And
names.
they want you to feel like it's everybody in the church.
Exactly. Yeah. They're going to do everything they can to make it feel that way. And so I did the same thing for this. I was like, okay, I'm really stressed about my event. What am I going to do? I'm going to write down every big piece of our event, and then we're going to go from there. And I'm a visual guy, so I didn't write a list. I actually wrote like a grid. So imagine like one column is each key thing. So opening session, game rotation, craft rotation, small group rotation, closing session. That was our format. I think I even had one for snack. And then on the top row, I put day 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And in the grid, I just placed things in. I was like, okay, well, what craft are we doing for day 1? Okay, what about day 2? What about day 3? Great. Once I saw it laid out, my worry just kind of like faded into the background. All of a sudden, on one page, I could see everything. It was really easy. And so I remember taking that page, bringing it into a staff meeting, and I was like, all right, guys, here's what I drew out. Here's like kind of our overview of the event. And we started using that as the framework for our meetings. We just go around doing check-ins. So whoever was the owner of the game rotation, I'd be like, all right, how are things going? Have we landed on the games we're going to use? Have you come up with the instructions that you're going to give to the team leader? Have we bought the materials that we need? Like, what percentage are we at for each day of these things? Okay, cool. Crafts. Like, let's get an update about crafts. So each part of the event, it kind of became our own like tracking system. And then we loved it so much, we started making more grids. So I talked about planning grids, plural. The one I told you about, we would treat that like a macro grid. There's one for your event that has every big part for all 5 days on one page. And then there's micro grids where for each one of those rotations, now it gets a little bit more detailed. So the game rotation, they have their own grid. So they've got, let's say I need 3 activities each day, activity 1, 2, and 3. And then again, top row, day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now they can lay out all the stuff, all the people, whatever details they want on their grid, they can put it there. And everybody can bring their micro grid into the meeting with them and share updates. And so it just created a lot of clarity for everybody involved. So I think that's actually going to be a really helpful tool for everybody. Regardless of how you do VBS, if you use a kit, whatever, I think this is going to be like the #1 most downloaded freebie is all of our planning grid templates that people are just going to use. They're going to print it out. They're going to fill it in because there's been nothing that's helped me more planning these events than to write these things down and have them in a visual format for you. So when it comes to programming, I'm not even going to get into the weeds of things because everybody does things so differently. I would just say planning grids might just be worth the cost of the whole book, which by the way, when you get the book, there's a bundle that you get access to for free as well. So it's a pretty killer deal.
Oh yeah, people will love that. We all love in ministry, especially kids ministry leaders, like a good system or whatever. It reminds me, when you were talking about, it reminds me of the old book Getting Things Done. Part of it was built around this idea that if the stuff lives in your brain unfiled, it causes stress and anxiety and all these different things, versus like just getting it somewhere that you can trust filed. And filed could be in a planning grid and a certain spreadsheet and some kind of productivity task management software, whatever, your brain can rest, so I think that's a huge thing, being able to do it that way. And then the digital part of me wants like a Google sheet that's the main planning grid and it's connected to the other tabs that are microgrids and they feed each other. Like that would be awesome.
We have that. It's not connected, but I'm a digital first guy. So year 1 we put it like pen and paper, which is fun sometimes. But at some point you need to put that in a spreadsheet so we can just share it. We need that.
I did. You would be probably, I don't know if you use AI tools a lot, but you might be into this. I use ChatGPT like every day. But what I had not done a whole lot of until a few weeks ago was like talk to it where it talks back to me. Like I talk to it instead of typing just because it's easy. but I would not talk to it where it talks back to me. We're just, we're talking and getting something done. But I had a 4-hour round trip drive and it was the week before KidmenU.com was going to launch. And I was like, there's so many things undone. It felt like VBS. It's like, I got grids upon grids. It's all in my head, And I mean, I kind of had made a plan before. It's not like I hadn't done this before. But anyway, I talked it was like 2 hours the whole way up, and just to make the checklist. And in my brain, I couldn't just do one category at a time because I had things going everywhere. So, okay, we need to bounce back to the website logistics category. And, I need to get over to the podcast category. I need to get over to the marketing category. And it was great. Yeah. So it came back, by the time I'm done, it was probably 100 items on a checklist in 6 or 7 or 8 different categories. The funny thing is we probably only accomplished, Jeremy, 20 to 25 of them, but still launched
probably the most important 20.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's how it goes. You get the things out there. So there's even a way to brain dump while doing something else that's not, an extra 2 hours is wasted. And then from there you can get it into your grids. Yeah.
I actually saw a YouTube video one time. I think you'll get a kick out of this because I think this is maybe close to the way you use it. But there was this guy who was telling his YouTube subscribers, he was like, his workflow during the day, he has an iPad next to him, like in addition to his regular workstation. And the only thing on his iPad is ChatGPT. And anytime he has an idea, a task, if he thinks, I want to follow up with Mary next week about this, whatever, he just like word vomits as he goes. Like doesn't type a single thing. Sometimes doesn't even stop what he's doing on his main laptop, just does that. And then at the end of the day, he's like, all right, summarize all the stuff I need to know for today or next week, whatever. And it kind of becomes his own junk drawer, his own notepad, whatever. Yeah. I don't use it quite as thoroughly as that, but that's a way that you can do it, right? I think the goal is get it out of your head and put it somewhere else that it can live, somewhere you can look at it and hopefully not be stressed about it anymore.
I need to start doing this in our team because the other thing we don't do, I started using Granola, the AI tool that listens to meetings and then makes a transcript out of them. I've done that in some other ways with chat where I give it the audio, like transcribe the audio, not in chat, but in something else. Actually, the free Riverside tool is great at that. And then upload the chat. But it's amazing how many times I have referred to one of those transcripts in chat, like, hey, what did they say about the staff change that's coming up? Because I forgot, right? And it goes back and it's like, they say they're going to do this by this date, and it's like way better memory than me is. So that's another tool, because you could plan all of your every VBS meeting if you're doing this with volunteers, or if your church is large enough, you have multiple staff. Everyone's recorded, and after every meeting, Granola write to chat or something like that. And it's like, give me the action items, the summary of the meeting and the action items. You come back and look at that. You know what I mean? Like that's another. We're getting off on a tangent here, but that's another way to leverage all this stuff together and make it easier. All right, finish up. Give me a people idea.
People, okay. I think, listen, there's probably some obvious things in here. We give some tips on the obvious things. One of the things I spend a little bit of time on in the book is really casting vision for how recruiting team leaders for your VBS is actually a really great way to audition future leaders. So I think even in the last podcast episode that we were on, I talked about a framework that one of my old bosses did, where he would talk about tasks, then projects, then roles. What do people do when they find somebody they think has potential for leadership? They just throw them straight into a role. They're like, I think you're awesome. Here's your new official role. Good luck. And what happens is sometimes they do great and sometimes they crash and burn. And I think their crashing and burning isn't on them. I think it's actually on us, because we are sometimes a little bit reckless and hasty about promoting them to an official, long-term, ongoing role. So instead, this framework we talked about last time, so I won't spend a ton of time on it. But if you think somebody has potential, give them a one-off task to help with, something that has to do with a role that you might have in mind for them. See how they do. If they do great, give them another task. If they keep doing great, try giving them a project, something a little bit bigger, a little bit more long-term, whatever. If they crush it at a project, great. Now you know they're ready for a role. And when they get in that role, the odds of them thriving in it are probably 99%. Why? Because you've already tested them along the way. You've already gotten data points that tell you, can this person handle the key elements of the role I have in mind? So when it comes to VBS, this is the number one way I've built leadership teams, actually, is This would fall into the project category primarily. So I need somebody to run our game rotation or a craft rotation, or somebody to coordinate our small group leaders, or somebody who can lead the worship segment or main sessions. You can come up with a leadership role for any piece of your event. Like, it's up to you. Yep. But the bottom line is, this is a one-off project where if you invite somebody into this role and they completely flop, like it was just too much for them, they're over their skis, great. At the end of it, like, you did it. Thank you for your service. And now you know for next year, this is probably not the right role for you. Maybe you'll just be a team member, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And by the way,
would you like to serve at the student ministry camp?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. The church handoff that we're all famous for.
Yeah.
But, the thing is, like, it's a great way to audition people and see if they really do have the potential that they think they have. Because a lot of times you'll invite somebody in to lead the game rotation or something, and they absolutely crush it. And then coming out of VBS, you're like, what can I give them moving forward? Like, can they lead a team of volunteers? Because this isn't just a team member. Like, this is a high capacity person who needs to be doing more. And by the way, they're probably going to be like way more empowered. They're going to grow way more individually when they're able to use their gifts more. So that's one thing when it comes to the people section, where I just say, number one, don't do it all on your own. So like, that part should be obvious. But as you're building a team, don't just think about VBS. Think about, how this can be a catalyst for building your team throughout the year, not just with team members, but also with team leaders.
Yeah, and I would imagine most Kidmen leaders could delegate more. Have more
100%
area captains, people in charge, whatever you want to call them, coaches. Coaches of coaches, like a lot of times there's even our arts camp. We have staff that if she were on here right now, she would tell you I push her every year. She leads a lot of the logistics, administrative stuff from our staff perspective. And the one thing I tell her every year is, like, you need more lieutenants. You need more lieutenants. Like, you need more people that ownership over areas, and we're kind of like, she and I are wired differently. Like, I'm definitely like, I that's my default. Like, I always want to find people to lead things and take ownership and give them more than I should and let them, all that kind of stuff. And she's definitely more of like that. It gets faster if I do it myself. You know what I mean? And like,
sure.
And I'll use volunteers like crazy. She does that part well. But when it gets big enough, it scales enough, you need that other level of leadership. It's just you to the volunteers isn't enough. And every kid's leader knows this, because you can't be in the nursery and the 2-year-old room and the kindergarten room and the preteen room. And the same is true with VBS. Like, you can't be at the game station and the large group room and the small group and the crafts So I think you just need more than volunteers. I think you need, whatever you want to call it, lieutenants, captains, people in those areas that are running them for you. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us, about the book, when people can get it, where they can get it, but also a little bit about KidmenU and Simple Kids Ministry.
Sure. Yeah. So Simple Kids Ministry is a podcast. It's now live. At the time of recording this, I think we only have like 2 episodes out, but by the time people hear this, there'll be more. We have a killer lineup of guests. We've got Nick, who's coming on. His episode should be live when this is. We had Jim Weidman. We have Lauren Jackson from the Kids Ministry Circle, Brittany Nelson from Deeper Kidmen, a ton of amazing people, and it's just an ongoing podcast. So that's really cool. It's Simple Kids Ministry. KidmenU is really fun. That's a certification program that we launched really out of a need. Like, when I started in kids ministry, there was no formal training anywhere. I mean, it was, if you wanted to grow as a leader, you go to conferences, you read books, you listen to podcasts, and then it's good luck. And seminaries at the time, and even now, aren't carrying a lot of programs for kids ministry leaders. If you want to be a lead pastor, great. We've got seminary for you. If you want to be a youth pastor, it works for that too. But if you want to be a kids pastor, good luck. So we built a 3-month program that's a combination of live group training and one-on-ones to help implement and put this stuff in action in your church. We launched the first cohort in fall of 25. It was incredible. We had some small church leaders, some mega church leaders. We had some church planters in it, even a couple people who aren't in a kids ministry role yet, but feel called to it and wanted to take their first big step. So, we've got multiple cohorts throughout the year. People can find that at KidmenU.com. We're building that up, and it's pretty exciting. And then the book is coming out March 1st. So we're really excited about that. It's called How to VBS. You can find it on Amazon, get it a day or 2 later. If you get the book, here's the fun part. Kids ministry leaders are like we go crazy for resources and things like that.
Of course.
If you get the book, you get access to the VBS Vault that's got, I think at last count, somewhere north of 100 resources in there. So like the planning grids we talked about, those are in there. Role descriptions are in there. If you're looking for a budget template, it's in there. If you're looking for, everything you can think of for your VBS, like there's a ton in there. I don't know what the price point will be if you buy it on its own, but if you get the book, you get it for free. So it's worth getting the book. I just believe there's a need to invest in people with no agenda, right? I'm not trying to sell a VBS or any kind of package. My heart is helping people reach people, helping them reach the lost, helping them disciple kids, and hopefully not burning out in the process. I think that's a big reason why the book was so important to me is burnout happens for a ton of reasons, but I'm convinced the one that nobody talks about is that we start worrying about things that don't really matter. Like if somebody gives you a plan and says, hey, of these 10 things that you're doing right now, only 3 of them actually matter. Okay, great. I can release the other 7. Or now I know how to do those 3 things. So the role of having a guide to help you along the way so that you don't stress about things that honestly don't always matter. People go crazy about all kinds of stuff for their VBS, and I feel like they burn themselves out with things that, if I'm being honest, don't make a difference. And so this book cuts straight to the heart. It lets you see what matters, what doesn't, and helps you have some peace of mind along the way. So I hope it's a blessing to kids ministry leaders.
Cool.
Oh, and by the way,
for
all of that is at howtovbs.com. Forgot to mention that.
Oh yeah, that's important. That's important. I mean, they can find it on Amazon, the book itself.
Sure.
But that's good to get the website as well, howtovbs.com. Jeremy, thanks for coming on the podcast. I love everything you're creating and doing. I'm always a big fan of more helpful content in the family ministry world. And you're right, kids ministry leaders love that stuff. So great job creating all this. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.